All right, today we're talking about heart attacks and heart disease. So I had you take a look in an activity at the leading causes of death in the US, and you'll notice that heart disease is number one. So we're going to talk a little bit about heart disease, what it is, what causes it, all of that good stuff. There's a lot of different types of heart disease. You could have a disease that affects the heart valves. You can have an aneurysm, you can have problems with the arteries, you can have problems with how it's beating and the electrical signals, you could have thickening of parts of the heart or maybe a deformity, you could have something that affects the outside of the heart, so there's a lot of different things. That being said, there are a majority of them, the majority of heart diseases in the United States are from coronary heart disease, coronary artery disease, and heart attack. Okay, so you'll see over here we've got artery disease and high blood pressure, we've got heart failure, stroke, but a lot of them here are going to be heart attacks. And so that's what we're talking about today as kind of our thing that we're going to look at. So mainly, we'll talk a little bit about artery disease. We talked about high blood pressure, but all of these things can contribute to heart attacks, which fall under coronary heart disease. So I want to show you this video clip. I'm going to mute it here. And they're going to talk about what happens to arteries. So here's an artery, and normally on the inside of this artery, we can see all the blood cells. The inside of this artery is smooth. That's what a normal artery should look like. However, over time, there can be damage. And when it gets damaged, perhaps by high blood pressure, maybe by smoking, something like that, we get a rush of cholesterol, okay, platelets, and some other blood cells stick to that damaged part. And over time, they form this protective coat, almost to protect the artery, but the problem is it narrows it as well. So we talked about narrowing of the arteries is a problem because it increases blood pressure and also the blood cells can't get through there. What happens is if our artery gets too narrow, blood can't get in there and it can become completely blocked. So this is what happens when we have a heart attack. When we completely block, and typically it's an artery in the heart called a coronary artery, it causes huge problems. So a heart attack is when the heart actually stops because one of the arteries in the heart is blocked. You might be wondering, well, why does it happen in the heart? Doesn't it happen anywhere else? Can't we get a blocked vessel somewhere else? Yes, we can. But typically they happen more often in the heart because that's where the highest blood pressure is because it's so close to the heart. And remember, higher blood pressure is going to damage the arteries over time. So typically the ones closest to the heart are the ones that are going to build up with these substances the quickest. And so part of the heart then, when we can't get blood to it, we can't get oxygen to it. And so part of that heart muscle is actually some of the cells are in distress in the process of dying if we can't get those red blood cells to them, which is what happened when it's blocked. So what are some of the risk factors then? So we have a couple different risk factors. So smoking, this can damage the artery, which causes those platelets and that plaque to build up. Genetics, you can have high cholesterol, and that can be genetic. So what's filling up in here are a lot of different types of blood cells, but one of them is cholesterol. And cholesterol is something that we consume in our diet. It's found in a lot of meat and animal products. And some people, though, are just predisposed based on genetics to having higher cholesterol no matter what they eat. So age, as you get older, you're going to have more of that buildup. Alcohol can help damage. Unhealthy food can contribute to increased cholesterol. Stress, the chemicals in stress can actually cause changes to our blood vessels. Interestingly enough, diabetes. So, diabetes can alter and put us at a higher risk for developing plaques, and then obesity. Let's go ahead and write some of these down. I just did a handful. A lot of these will probably make sense to you. When we think about what's healthy for our heart and what's unhealthy for our heart, the unhealthy things are the things that are going to increase our risk factor for having a heart attack. So when we have a heart attack, we have some symptoms. And the reason we have some of these symptoms is because part of our heart is not working. It's not getting oxygen. So we get pain in our chest. We get shortness of breath because we're not able to pump that blood efficiently. We might get pain in our shoulder. We might feel lightheaded because we're not getting oxygen to all of our cells. So I have a couple written down here. Again, that shortness of breath. If our heart, part of our heart is not working, we can't pump oxygen effectively to all of our cells in our body. And so we're going to feel weak. Same thing with that chest pain. If we can't get oxygen to some of our chest cells or chest muscles, there's going to be some pain signals because those cells are in distress. So our heart is super important for us to circulate the blood around our body. If we can't circulate that blood, that means we're not getting oxygen to all of our cells. So what are some treatments then? We have several different treatments. And if you have somebody who goes into the hospital because they had a heart attack, they might have one of these. So in any type of heart attack, what's going to happen is our blood vessel, our heart, our coronary artery, one of our arteries, is going to become blocked. And so we need to widen it. So one of the things they have is an angioplasty. And this is where they literally take a medical grade balloon, they insert it into your artery. Now remember, arteries are still pretty tiny, so this is a tiny little balloon, and they pump up that balloon to widen your artery. On this page, we can see, here's a picture. This is where there was a blockage. Okay, super narrow, you can see it narrows in there. And then after they widened it, with that balloon, you can see that it's back to its normal size. Instead of a balloon, another method is they can put a wire mesh in here to hold the artery open. And this is called a stent. So same idea, we're just widening, but we're just using a different tool instead. I'm going to skip that animation. Here you can see this is where it was narrowed before they put the stent in, and here the stent was put in, and so now it's widened. Blood can flow through. And then the other thing, if you ever hear of somebody having bypass surgery, like a double bypass or triple bypass, if there's a blockage, what they can do is they can take a vein or an artery or something, some other blood vessel from a different part of your body or from a cadaver, and they will actually take that blood vessel and connect it and make a bypass. So they'll add another blood vessel so it can go around that blockage. And this is called a coronary bypass. Your arteries in your heart are called the coronary arteries. And so that's why we hear the word coronary in this coronary bypass.